Hello there, and welcome to Forgotten Worlds. My name is Thomas, and tonight I'd like to invite you to drift with me into a question that lingers in the silence of deep time. Take a slow breath, let the day soften. Feel the weight of the present moment, and then imagine it dissolving into something older, something far older than history, older than humanity itself. The earth beneath your feet has been here for 4.5 billion years. Across that vastness, mountains have risen and fallen, oceans have opened and closed, continents have wandered like rafts across a restless sea. Life itself has come and gone in waves, flourishing, vanishing, and beginning again. Against that backdrop, our story is impossibly brief. A few thousand years of civilization, a flicker in the night, and yet we often tell ourselves we are the first to build, to dream, to wonder at the stars. But what if that belief is mistaken? What if long before us, in ages erased by oceans and fire and ice, there were others, civilizations that rose, flourished, and disappeared, leaving behind almost nothing but whispers in stone and echoes in myth? This is not a debate, but an exploration, not a search for proof, but for perspective. Tonight, we will follow that question through science and story, myth and imagination, asking whether humanity is truly the first civilization on Earth or only one of many, a brief spark in an endless cycle of rise and fall. And to even begin, we have to set aside the scales of time we know. Not centuries, not even millennia, but billions of years, the true measure of Earth's memory. Because only when we step into that immensity can we see how much space there has been for forgotten worlds. When we speak of human history, we think in centuries. 1,000 years feels long, 10,000 longer still. The pyramids seem impossibly old, yet they were built less than 5,000 years ago. The first cities rose scarcely 7,000 years past. Written language has existed for perhaps 6 millennia, agriculture for 10. Our entire recorded history is a flicker, a single candle in a cavern of darkness stretching backward for billions of years. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. To comprehend such a number is almost impossible. If the entire history of our planet were compressed into a single day, humanity's existence would take place only in the last fraction of the last second before midnight. Everything we call civilization, everything we know of history, would be no more than the blink of an eye. And all the hours before us, the vastness of deep time, would be filled with other dramas, other possibilities, most of them erased beyond recognition. This immensity matters because within such vastness, cycles have room to unfold. Continents drift like slow ships, oceans open and vanish, mountains rise into the sky only to crumble back into dust. Species appear, thrive, and fade, their traces washed away in waves of extinction and renewal. And when you think about all that time, billions upon billions of years, it is almost overwhelming. More than enough space for worlds to have come and gone, for stories to be written and erased. If civilizations had risen long before us, how much of them would truly remain? Perhaps nothing at all, or perhaps only the faintest of echoes, hidden in stone and silence, waiting to be noticed. Geology itself is not kind to memory. Stone seems eternal, but it is not. Rain and wind grind it down, rivers carve it into valleys, glaciers scour it into plains. Volcanoes bury and renew the land, tectonic plates slide and fold, recycling entire landscapes into the deep mantle of the earth. Over millions of years, mountains are ground flat, oceans vanish, continents shift into new shapes. The surface of the planet is a palimpsest, written over and over until the first writings are long gone. Less than 1% of Earth's surface is older than 2 billion years. The rest has been erased, recycled, renewed. What chance does memory have against that? Even fossils, those rarest of traces, survive only by accident. The vast majority of living beings leave no record at all. Entire species vanish without a trace. What survives is fragmentary. A bone here, a shell there, impressions in ancient mud turned to stone. From these fragments we reconstruct worlds. But what we see is only a fraction of what once was. If whole epochs of life can vanish so completely, why not civilizations? Why not cities, tools, or even intelligent species that left no trace we could recognize? Imagine walking through a forest today and seeing only the surface, the trees, the streams, the moss underfoot. Beneath you, hidden by soil and stone, are older forests, older rivers, worlds upon worlds buried by time. That is the earth itself, layers upon layers, most invisible, most erased. Our human span occupies only the thinnest crust, the topmost skin of memory. Below us lies a depth so vast we cannot reach it, filled with ages we will never fully know. And here is the haunting truth. The deeper into time we look, the less we see. The earliest billion years of Earth's history are almost entirely hidden. Rocks from that age are rare, scattered like relics, altered by heat and pressure until they are nearly unrecognizable. The farther back we go, the fainter the record becomes, until we are left with silences, with gaps that no amount of science can fully fill. Those silences stretch wide enough to hold entire stories, entire civilizations, erased by the grinding patience of geological time. This is why the question lingers. Humanity has existed for only a moment, civilizations for even less. Yet the Earth has been here all along, changing, recycling, erasing. What else might have risen in the billions of years before us? What secrets lie hidden in the stone, too deeply buried, too thoroughly erased for us to ever find? Pause and imagine that immensity. Imagine continents colliding, mountains folding, oceans boiling away and returning. Imagine forests older than imagination, swept away without trace. Imagine civilizations, too, if they ever existed, rising and vanishing, their cities consumed by the shifting crust, their artifacts melted into stone, their stories lost forever. Deep time does not remember easily, it does not keep. It buries, it recycles, it renews. And in that endless recycling, we find both humility and wonder. Humility, because we realize how brief we are, how fragile our record will be against the vastness of geological time. Wonder, because the silence itself is possibility, a canvas large enough to hold not just the story of humanity, but perhaps other stories. Erased, waiting only in imagination. Scientists at NASA once asked themselves a haunting question. If an industrial civilization had existed on Earth millions of years ago, long before humanity, how would we know? Could we ever find proof, or would all traces be erased by time? They called this the Silurian hypothesis, borrowing the name from a race of intelligent reptiles in science fiction creatures imagined as having ruled the Earth long before humans rose. The idea was not that dinosaurs or lizards had built cities, but rather that the geological record might conceal secrets, and that our own civilization could one day be just as invisible to distant descendants. The scientists asked us to step outside our human arrogance and imagine Earth not as our stage alone, but as a place that may have hosted others, now lost to deep time. If you were to look for the remains of an industrial civilization from, say, 100 million years ago, what would you expect to find? Not buildings or roads, those vanish quickly, even in just thousands of years. Not art or writing paper, wood, even stone crumble under the patience of erosion. The only traces likely to persist would be chemical. Anomalies in the isotopes of carbon, oxygen, or nitrogen, strange concentrations of heavy metals, unnatural molecules that nature does not produce, plastics, pesticides, synthetic compounds. Already, in our own age, we are laying down such markers. Our burning of fossil fuels is changing the isotope ratios of carbon in the atmosphere. Our fertilizers and chemicals alter the chemistry of rivers and soils. Plastics are sinking into sediments, tiny fragments washing into every sea, embedding themselves into the geological record. Nuclear tests have scattered radioactive isotopes that will remain detectable for hundreds of thousands of years. If an alien civilization were to examine Earth millions of years from now, they might never see our cities, but they would see our signature written in the rocks, in the chemistry of the soil, in the invisible fingerprints of industry. The Silurian hypothesis asks us to imagine the reverse. If another civilization had existed tens or hundreds of millions of years ago, what traces would they have left behind? Perhaps similar anomalies. Shifts in isotope ratios that cannot be explained by volcanism or natural processes, synthetic molecules embedded in sediments, unusual patterns in metal deposits. But would we even recognize such markers if we saw them? Or would we dismiss them as strange quirks of geology, unexplained anomalies in a record already filled with mysteries? The problem is time. Millions of years erase much. Sediments are buried, compressed, transformed into stone, subducted into the mantle, melted into magma, returned as lava. Oceans rise and fall, continents break apart and collide. Whatever thin signals remain may be scattered, incomplete, or impossible to interpret with certainty. A few isotope anomalies here, a few odd concentrations there. Never enough to reconstruct a civilization, only enough to whisper possibility. Consider this: the earliest industrial age of humanity, just a few hundred years old, has already altered the planet in measurable ways. But if our species were to vanish tomorrow, how much of that would survive 10 million years? Skyscrapers would collapse, bridges crumble, cities sink beneath forests and seas. Only fragments of plastic, traces of altered carbon, faint residues of radiation might endure. A civilization spanning the globe, gone almost without a trace. If this is true for us, why not for others? Pause and reflect on what this means. If you dig deep into the rocks of Earth and find a thin layer of strange chemicals, do you see it as a sign of volcanoes, of ancient fire, or as a ghost of something greater? How many such ghosts lie buried, overlooked, waiting for us to ask the right question? And even if there were no others, the thought experiment humbles us. It shows us how fragile memory is on a planetary scale, how easily civilizations vanish into the silence of stone. It warns us that if we do not endure, we too will be forgotten, our presence reduced to faint chemical echoes in future rocks. The Silurian hypothesis is less about proving the existence of ancient civilizations than about reminding us of our place in time. We are not the inevitable pinnacle. We are a moment, a possibility. The Earth is vast enough, ancient enough, to have hosted others before us, and will likely host others after us. The record of the past is thin, but the silence is wide enough to hold infinite stories. Close your eyes and imagine a civilization millions of years ago, their cities rising and falling, their lights burning, their machines turning. Imagine their eventual collapse, their traces washed away by oceans, buried by mountains, erased by time. Imagine us now, standing at the surface of that same Earth, unaware of the ghosts beneath our feet. The question is not whether it happened, but whether we could ever truly know. The history of life on Earth is not a smooth line of progress, but a fragile story, repeatedly interrupted by catastrophe. Again and again, the planet has been reset, as if some unseen hand swept the stage clean before the play could continue. Life adapts, flourishes, fills every niche, and then disaster strikes, and almost everything vanishes. These are the mass extinctions, 5 great die-offs in the geological record, each a turning point, each a reminder that survival is not guaranteed. The first came in the Ordovician, nearly 450 million years ago. The seas were full of strange creatures then, trilobites scuttling across the seafloor, coral reefs rising in shallow waters, the first primitive fish swimming through currents. Life was almost entirely oceanic, flourishing in forms alien to our eyes. And then, ice descended. A great glaciation lowered sea levels, oxygen plummeted, ecosystems collapsed. Nearly 85% of marine species vanished. It was as if the Earth had wiped the canvas, clearing space for something new. The second followed in the Devonian, about 375 million years ago, the age of fishes. Life had begun to experiment with land. Early plants spread across continents, forests rising for the first time. Amphibians crept from the shallows, lungs gasping unfamiliar air. Yet something happened, climate change, perhaps an asteroid impact, perhaps both, and for 20 million years extinction waves rolled through the planet. Coral reefs collapsed, armored fish disappeared, and many of the first pioneers of land fell silent. What might have risen in those forests, what paths intelligence might have taken, we will never know. The record ends, the story erased. The third extinction was the most devastating of all. The Permian-Triassic event, 252 million years ago. Sometimes called the Great Dying, it was the closest life on Earth has come to complete annihilation. Over 90% of species perished. Entire groups were erased from the tree of life. Vast volcanic eruptions in Siberia may have poisoned the atmosphere, igniting climate chaos, acidifying the oceans, choking the air. Forests vanished, reefs dissolved, insects collapsed in numbers. For a time, the Earth itself was nearly sterile. If intelligence had ever flickered in that age, it would have been extinguished completely, leaving nothing but silence. And yet from that silence, the ancestors of dinosaurs and eventually mammals found their chance. The fourth came 201 million years ago, at the boundary of the Triassic and Jurassic. Life had begun to recover, reptiles diversifying, ecosystems regrowing, but then again, catastrophe struck. Massive volcanism tore through Pangaea, splitting continents, flooding the air with carbon dioxide. Climate shifted violently. Many species vanished, and the survivors found an open stage. Dinosaurs seized the opportunity, rising to dominance for the next 165 million years. Without that extinction, they might never have ruled the Earth. The fifth is the one most familiar to us, the Cretaceous-Paleogene event, 66 million years ago. The age of dinosaurs was in full bloom, ecosystems rich and diverse, when a rock from space struck the Earth near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. The skies darkened, forests burned, oceans acidified. Within years the dinosaurs were gone, along with 75% of all species. Yet again, the Earth reset itself. In the aftermath, mammals found their moment, small and overlooked creatures blossoming into new forms. Without that impact, we would not be here. Each extinction is both ending and beginning. Each is a reminder that Earth does not preserve life's story in a straight line. Instead, it erases and rewrites, sometimes brutally, sometimes mercifully, always indifferently. Life endures, but not always the same life. The stage survives, but the actors change. This raises a haunting possibility. What if intelligence had risen before, in some forgotten branch, only to be erased by one of these catastrophes? Could the Devonian forests have harbored minds we will never know, amphibian thinkers gazing up at alien stars? Could the Permian seas have sheltered creatures that built, imagined, and dreamed before fire and poison erased their world? Could the dinosaurs, in their vast span of 165 million years, have birthed not only teeth and claws, but also tools and thought civilizations swallowed whole by the sudden violence of an asteroid? We tell ourselves we are unique, but the record is full of silences large enough to hide entire histories. Extinctions leave gaps not only in species, but in possibility. Each time life is reset, we lose not just what was, but what might have been. Close your eyes and picture those worlds. Trilobites crawling across reefs that no longer exist, forests of giant ferns whispering in a Devonian wind, seas boiling with ammonites and armored fish, reptiles spreading across Pangaea, dinosaurs ruling endless plains. Now picture them gone, a silence descending, an emptiness where life once sang. In that silence, anything could be lost, even civilizations, if they had time to rise. The great extinctions remind us that the Earth is not a stable cradle. It is a reset machine. Life rises, flourishes, collapses, begins again. Intelligence may be only one of many experiments, one that happened to endure long enough this time to wonder at its own fragility. But in the immensity of deep time, who can say it was the first? For more than 165 million years, dinosaurs ruled the Earth. To put that into perspective, humanity has existed in its current form for perhaps 300 years, and our civilizations for only a few thousand. Dinosaurs endured for a span hundreds of times greater, through shifting climates, drifting continents, rising and falling seas. They survived where countless others perished. They were not a passing experiment, but a dynasty, stretching across deep time. When we picture them, we imagine claws and teeth, predators and prey locked in endless struggle. But dinosaurs were not merely monsters. They were diverse, adaptable, endlessly inventive in form. Some grew to unimaginable size, the great sauropods towering higher than trees. Some became small and nimble, darting through undergrowth. Some took to the air, their feathers shimmering in ancient sunlight. Dinosaurs filled every niche, shaping ecosystems in ways we are only beginning to understand. And among them were species whose brains were growing larger, whose behavior was becoming more complex. Troodon, a small bird-like predator that lived near the end of the Cretaceous, had one of the highest brain-to-body ratios of any dinosaur. It had stereoscopic vision, grasping hands, and a brain size that suggested intelligence beyond the average reptile. Some paleontologists wondered, if not for the asteroid, could Troodon or something like it have evolved into a truly intelligent being? This speculation gave birth to the dinosauroid hypothesis. In the 1980s, paleontologist Dale Russell imagined what Troodon's descendants might have become had they continued to evolve. The model he proposed was striking: an upright, tool-using, large-brained creature with forward-facing eyes and hands capable of precision. In other words, something eerily similar to us. Russell's dinosauroid has been criticized for being too anthropocentric, too human-like. Evolution rarely repeats itself so neatly. And yet the idea lingers, because it reminds us that intelligence is not inevitable in humans alone. It is a possibility that could have arisen in other forms, in other ages, if time had unfolded differently. If dinosaurs had another 66 million years, could they have built cities? Could they have invented fire, tools, machines? Could they have looked up at the stars and wondered who else might be out there? Or perhaps they did not need to mirror us at all. Intelligence need not look like human civilization. It could have taken forms we cannot imagine, forms that left little trace in the fossil record. Here is the haunting thought: if such intelligence did arise, would we even know? After tens of millions of years, the surface of the Earth has been rewritten. Mountains have risen and eroded, seas have opened and closed, entire continents shifted. Whatever traces they might have left, artifacts, cities, even technologies, could be gone, ground into dust or buried beyond reach. We might walk above their ruins every day, never knowing they were there. Dinosaurs had time on their side. far more time than we have yet been granted. Enough time for experiments, for possibilities, for paths not taken. We assume they were only beasts, but perhaps intelligence is not as rare as we think. Perhaps it is a thread woven into life itself, appearing again and again, sometimes nurtured, sometimes cut short. Speculation carries us further still. Imagine a lineage of intelligent dinosaurs, perhaps descended from Troodon, living in small communities, shaping tools from stone or bone. Imagine them experimenting with fire, watching flames flicker in the dark. Imagine them spreading across ancient continents, building in ways we might never recognize, creating in forms we cannot picture. Their world would be alien to us, their artifacts unrecognizable, their traces erased by time. Yet in their moment, they might have been as real, as vibrant as we are now. And then the asteroid came, a rock from space, 10 kilometers wide, striking with the force of billions of bombs. Forests burned, skies darkened, ecosystems collapsed. Whatever experiments intelligence had begun among the dinosaurs, they were ended in that instant. The age of reptiles closed, and the age of mammals began. But the possibility remains. If intelligence could have arisen among dinosaurs, even briefly, then humanity is not unique. We are part of a larger pattern, a cycle that may repeat again and again. We are not the first, and we may not be the last. Close your eyes and picture it. A world of vast forests, of rivers winding through ancient plains, of stars shining down on creatures who may have gazed back. A world where intelligence might have flickered in forms lost to time, erased by fire and stone. A world that reminds us that the earth is not ours alone, that its stage has been shared by countless players, some of whom may have walked paths not so different from our own. And perhaps, in that imagining, we glimpse the true lesson of the dinosaurs' lost chance. Intelligence is fragile, contingent, uncertain. It may arise, it may vanish, it may leave no trace at all. We are here not because intelligence was inevitable, but because chance allowed it this time. And chance, as always, may turn again. When we think of intelligence, we tend to picture creatures like ourselves walking on land, shaping tools, building monuments that reach toward the sky. But the oceans hold their own mysteries, and in their depths live minds that are as alien as anything we could imagine. The octopus, the squid, the cuttlefish cephalopods, whose intelligence astonishes scientists and humbles our sense of uniqueness. Octopuses can solve puzzles, open jars, recognize individual humans. They can change color and texture in an instant, camouflaging with a precision that borders on artistry. They use tools, gathering coconut shells to build shelters. They play, they explore, they remember. And yet, their brains are not like ours at all. More than half of their neurons are in their arms, each limb capable of independent thought, like 8 minds woven into one. Their intelligence evolved along a completely different path, not from mammals or birds, but from mollusks, a lineage that split from ours 500 million years ago. If intelligence can arise in such alien forms, what might it mean for the history of the Earth? Could cephalopods have gone further, developing not only problem-solving but culture, not only tools but technologies? Could there have been an age of the oceans when intelligence thrived, unnoticed, unrecorded, erased by time? The ocean does not preserve memory well. Bones and shells sink into sediments, but soft-bodied creatures like octopuses rarely fossilize. Even when they do, they leave little more than shadows pressed into stone. An aquatic civilization, even if it had risen, would vanish almost without trace. Tools of shell or bone would dissolve. Cities of coral would be ground to sand. Structures built in the shifting currents would be lost to erosion. In the silence of deep time, almost nothing would remain. Imagine a species of cephalopod that did not die young, as modern octopuses do, but lived for decades. Imagine them passing knowledge to one another, forming traditions, shaping the seafloor with tools of stone or hardened shell. Imagine communities of intelligence hidden in the depths, exchanging signals in patterns of light and color. We would never know they were there. Time and ocean would sweep their story clean. And yet, when we watch the octopus, we see hints of possibility. Its curiosity, its creativity, its ability to manipulate its environment. These are the raw ingredients of civilization. If chance had arranged things differently, if evolution had given them longer lives or more stable lineages, perhaps they would have built something lasting. Perhaps they did, in an age long before ours, and the sea simply swallowed their legacy. It is humbling to consider that the ocean, which covers more than 2/3 of our planet, remains mostly unexplored even today. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deepest trenches of Earth. Who can say what secrets lie buried there, not in the living present, but in the layers of the past, in sediments miles thick, in worlds erased by shifting tides? And if an oceanic civilization did rise, what would it have looked like? Perhaps not cities of stone, but networks of coral reshaped and cultivated. Not fire, which cannot burn underwater, but light harnessed from bioluminescent creatures. Not wheels or engines, but technologies grown from biology itself, woven from living tissue. A civilization we might not even recognize as such, because it would be built not in the language of machines, but in the language of the sea. But even if it had existed, it would have vanished almost entirely. The ocean is not a patient archivist. It erodes, dissolves, recycles. Currents scatter, sediments bury, tectonics consume. After millions of years, nothing would remain but silence. And in that silence, imagination alone must fill the gaps. Close your eyes and drift into the deep. Picture vast coral cathedrals glowing with bioluminescence, cephalopod architects shaping currents and light into art. Picture networks of signals flashing across the dark, a language of color and movement no land dweller could ever understand. Picture generations passing knowledge not in books or monuments, but in living displays, memories woven into bodies themselves. And then picture it all gone, swallowed by the tides, erased by time, forgotten by the earth itself. The possibility of an oceanic civilization reminds us that intelligence is not bound to land, nor to us. It is an experiment that life may run in many ways, in many places, in many forms. Some may endure long enough to leave monuments. Others may vanish into silence, leaving only questions. And perhaps that is the fate of most intelligence, not to be remembered, but to be erased. Its story whispered only in speculation. And so the oceans remain both cradle and grave. They nurture life, they conceal possibility, they erase memory. Beneath their surface may lie not only the origins of life, but the forgotten chapters of intelligence. Chapters we will never read, because the sea has already turned the pages to blank stone. Long before modern humans became the dominant species on Earth, the world was not empty. It was shared, sometimes peacefully, sometimes in conflict, with other kinds of humans. Not lesser, not failures, but parallel experiments in intelligence, each with their own gifts, each with their own possibilities. We call them Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, Homo erectus, names that reduce them to categories, when in truth they were people, beings with minds, families, cultures, and perhaps even dreams. The Neanderthals lived across Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. Their bodies were strong, adapted to cold climates, their brains as large as or even larger than ours. Evidence shows they made sophisticated tools, controlled fire, hunted cooperatively. In caves they left pigments, beads and carvings, signs of symbolic thought, of an imagination not unlike our own. They buried their dead with care, placing flowers or tools beside them, as if honoring a passage into something beyond. These were not beasts. They were humans of a different kind. The Denisovans, known mostly from fragments of bone and tooth found in a Siberian cave, are even more mysterious. Genetic evidence tells us they interbred with both humans and Neanderthals, leaving traces of themselves in our DNA. They, too, may have had cultures, tools, and traditions that vanished without record. The cave where their remains were found also contained jewelry, pendants, and carefully crafted artifacts. In their time, they were not shadows but a people, living and shaping their world. On an island in Indonesia, the tiny Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit, survived until as recently as 50 years ago. Barely over a meter tall, with small brains yet sophisticated stone tools, they challenge our assumptions about intelligence. How could such small beings achieve so much? And if they could, what more might they have been capable of, given time? Each of these species shows us that intelligence is not ours alone. It is not unique to Homo sapiens. It has flowered more than once, in more than one form, in more than one lineage. And that raises the question, what if one of them had gone further? Imagine a world where Neanderthals, with their immense strength and sharp minds, developed agriculture, cities, art, and writing. Imagine Denisovans building networks across Asia, trading, shaping landscapes, leaving behind monuments. Imagine Homo floresiensis creating intricate island cultures, navigating seas, crafting myths that echoed for tens of thousands of years. These civilizations might have risen alongside us or long before us, only to vanish, erased by time or by our own dominance. We often speak of humanity as inevitable, as though we were destined to rise. But the truth is more fragile. Our closest relatives nearly matched us in intelligence, and in some ways exceeded us. The difference may have been only a matter of chance, a change in climate, a shift in resources, a brief advantage in numbers. History could have unfolded differently, and it might have been Neanderthals who gazed at the stars and wondered if they were alone. The traces we have are tantalizing. Caves with painted walls, hand stencils pressed in ochre, carvings etched into stone. These are not mere decorations. They are symbols, signs of thought reaching beyond survival, into memory and imagination. They are the beginnings of civilization, the roots of art and culture. What if they had not ended there? What if time had allowed them to blossom into full civilizations, with cities, myths, and sciences of their own? And if they had, would we recognize their legacy today? Or would it have been erased, like so much else, by erosion, by tectonics, by the passage of tens of thousands of years? Stone tools crumble, wood rots, symbols fade. A Neanderthal city, built of timber and bone, would leave almost nothing behind. An entire culture could vanish in silence, leaving only faint hints for us to puzzle over in caves and sediments. Beneath the soil and stone, their presence still lingers, not in monuments of marble or iron, but in whispers written into our very bodies. When you breathe, when your heart beats, when your skin warms in the sun, you carry fragments of them within you. Modern humans outside of Africa still hold traces of Neanderthal DNA, quiet signatures in our blood that shape how we respond to altitude, to sunlight, even to disease. The Denisovans left us gifts, two adaptations that allow some to thrive in the thin air of the Tibetan plateau, echoes of a people whose faces we will never truly see. These genetic shadows are not relics of failure. They are living threads, woven into the tapestry of what we call human. And yet, for all they gave us, they walked their own paths, rich and mysterious. Picture a gathering deep within a cave, where firelight flickers against walls covered in ochre hands. Those prints were not left for us, but for themselves, reminders of presence, of belonging, of being. Imagine the quiet rhythm of stone tools striking, not in desperation, but in craft. Imagine the silence after a hunt, when a group shared food not as animals, but as people, bound by story, by ritual, by memory. We call them extinct, but perhaps that is too simple a word. Extinction suggests an end, a silence absolute. Yet their presence endures in us, in our genomes, in the artifacts they shaped, in the questions they left behind. What does it mean to be human if others, so like us, once walked beside us? What if intelligence was never singular, but a chorus, and we are merely the surviving note? Close your eyes and picture it. A Neanderthal child painting on cave walls, tracing patterns of stars. A Denisovan elder crafting a pendant, passing it to the next generation. A community of Homo floresiensis gathered around a fire, telling stories beneath unfamiliar constellations. These moments are gone, erased by time, but for them, they were as real as our cities, our books, our technologies are to us now. Speculation invites us to imagine further. If one of these civilizations had endured, would we be here at all? Or would they have claimed the earth, leaving us as the forgotten branch, erased from memory? Perhaps we were not destined to rule, but merely lucky. Perhaps we are not the only humans who could have risen, but only the last survivors of a long and tangled lineage. And in that possibility lies a humbling truth. We are not alone, even in our past. We are part of a family, a web of beings who shared this planet, who thought, created, and lived. Their voices are faint now, but they were once clear, and in their silence we hear the fragility of our own story. The Earth does not keep its memories. Unlike the Moon, where craters remain for billions of years, or Mars, whose dry valleys preserve ancient rivers, our planet is restless. It shifts, folds, and remakes itself. Continents drift like rafts across a molten sea. Mountains rise and crumble. Oceans advance and retreat. Volcanoes bury landscapes in fire and ash, while glaciers grind them to dust. What is built today may not even exist tomorrow, at least not in recognizable form. This constant renewal is the reason life has thrived here. It refreshes the soil, recycles the oceans, stabilizes the climate, but it is also the reason so much of the past has been erased. The oldest rocks we know on Earth are about 4 billion years old, but they are fragments, scattered and transformed. Less than 1% of Earth's surface is older than 2 billion years. The rest has been recycled. Imagine a library in which 99 out of every 100 books had been burned and rewritten again and again, until only scraps remain. That is the geological archive of our world. If an ancient civilization had risen in that deep past, how much could possibly survive? Cities crumble in mere centuries if abandoned. Roads vanish beneath forests in decades. Metals corrode, glass shatters, wood rots. Even stone monuments yield to rain and wind in a few thousand years. Within millions of years, nothing recognizable would remain. And within billions, entire continents would have been swallowed into the mantle, their ruins melted and remade as new crust. Think of how little remains of our own ancestors, even from recent history. The oldest surviving human-made structures, pyramids, stone circles, cave paintings, are but tens of thousands of years old. Beyond that, silence. The first tools, the first shelters, the first fires, all gone. Now imagine projecting that silence not for thousands, but millions of years. If we were to vanish tomorrow, how much would endure for the geologists of some far future? Plastics embedded in rocks, radioactive isotopes, subtle chemical anomalies. That is all. No buildings, no books, no art. A civilization spanning the globe reduced to geological whispers. And if that is true for us, why not for others? Why not for civilizations that might have come before, in ages long forgotten? Their traces, if they existed, would have been erased by erosion, buried by tectonics, melted by volcanism. The Earth is not a graveyard that preserves its dead, it is a furnace that remakes them. Speculation invites us to imagine. Perhaps long before us, there were cities by ancient seas, now ground into sand. Perhaps there were networks of trade across vanished continents, their maps erased by shifting plates. Perhaps there were machines, tools, art, stories, all swallowed, all dissolved, all gone. The stage of the Earth is eternal, but the players are ephemeral. Even civilizations may be only sparks, quickly extinguished, their ashes recycled into the stone beneath our feet. This makes our own time feel both fragile and vast. Fragile because we realize how easily we too will be erased. Vast because it reminds us that we are not the only possibility. The silence of the Earth is not proof of absence, it is proof of erasure. The reset machine turns, and what was once here may be lost forever. Pause and imagine standing on a mountain ridge, looking out over folded valleys and rivers that have carved their paths for millions of years. Beneath your feet lie the ruins of older worlds, pressed into stone, broken, melted, remade. You cannot see them, but they are there, fragments, whispers, echoes of what once was. The Earth is always writing over its own story, and we are living only in its latest chapter. And perhaps that is why the question matters. Not to prove that others existed, but to realize how fragile existence is. To understand that civilizations, no matter how great, may vanish without trace, swallowed by the very planet that nurtured them. To see that our permanence is an illusion, and that deep time has no patience for memory. The Earth does not keep its past, it recycles it, and in that recycling lies both the beauty of renewal and the haunting silence of what is forever forgotten. If humanity were to vanish tomorrow, what would remain? Our cities feel permanent, our monuments eternal. We look at skyscrapers of steel and glass, at roads stretching across continents, at dams and towers and satellites orbiting overhead, and we imagine they will last forever. But the truth is otherwise. Time is relentless. Wind and water, heat and frost, forests reclaiming stone, oceans rising within centuries. The familiar structures of our world would begin to crumble. Within millennia, most would be gone. Archaeologists today struggle to piece together the lives of humans just 10,000 years ago, though they lived in settlements, made tools, carved symbols. 10 million years is a span so great that nearly nothing human would survive it. The pyramids would erode to shapeless mounds, steel would rust into dust, concrete would fracture and dissolve. Skyscrapers would collapse, swallowed by soil and forest. Even great bridges and dams, seemingly indestructible, would vanish into rubble. From the perspective of deep time, our civilizations are fragile shells, already fading before they are finished. And yet, some traces would endure, not in monuments or architecture, but in the subtle language of geology. Plastics, for example, are already embedding themselves into sediments. Microplastics are sinking into the ocean floor, mixing with sands and silts, becoming part of future rocks. In millions of years, a geologist might split open a stone and find within it the colorful fragments of our discarded bottles and bags, fossilized into the Earth itself. Nuclear isotopes, too, will leave their mark. Our brief age of atomic fire has scattered radionuclides into the soil, isotopes that do not occur naturally in significant amounts. Some will fade quickly, but others will linger, detectable long after all memory of us is gone. These isotopes will be signatures, faint but unmistakable, a chemical fingerprint of our presence. Carbon will tell our story as well. The burning of fossil fuels has shifted the isotope ratios of carbon in the atmosphere and in the oceans. This shift is already being laid down in sediments, a sharp line in the geological record. To future eyes, it will be as visible as the thin layer of iridium that marks the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. A chemical scar, forever etched into stone. Other signs may survive too. Unusual concentrations of metals, residues of fertilizers, traces of artificial compounds. Together, they form a layer, a thin stratum in the geological archive that future beings might one day study. They would not find our cities, our books, or our art. But they would find this, a sudden spike of anomalies, a moment when the Earth itself was altered by an intelligent hand. This is the language of future archaeology. Not ruins or monuments, but isotopes and plastics. Traces too small for the eye, but too strange to be natural. And from these traces, the question will be asked, who were they? What happened to them? Now, imagine turning that question backward. If another civilization had existed before us millions of years ago, tens of millions, even hundreds, what would we expect to see? Not cities, not artifacts, not monuments. Only the same faint markers, odd isotope ratios, unusual concentrations of metals, strange molecules in sediments. And if we did see them, would we even recognize them as signs of civilization, or would we mistake them for anomalies of nature? This is the haunting symmetry. The evidence we would leave is the evidence we would expect to find. A thin chemical layer, a brief anomaly in the endless stone. And in most cases, even that would vanish, eroded, subducted, erased by the restless earth. So perhaps the record is already there, hidden in rocks we have not yet studied, dismissed as quirks of geology, overlooked because we do not expect what they might mean. Or perhaps there is nothing, only silence. But silence does not prove absence. It proves only the patience of the earth and the fragility of civilization against time. Close your eyes and picture a far future, 10 million years from now. Imagine geologists of some new species splitting open rocks, studying sediments, tracing anomalies. They find a thin line of plastic fragments, of shifted carbon, of radioactive whispers. They wonder at it, puzzled, intrigued. They ask, what happened here? Who left this trace? Were they alone? Were they the first? And in their questions, they will mirror our own. For just as we imagine them, they will imagine us. And just as we wonder if others came before, they will wonder if others came before us. In this way, archaeology becomes not just the study of the past, but the echo of possibility, a reminder that civilizations may come and go, leaving behind only whispers in stone. Life is a patient experimenter. Across billions of years, it has tried endless forms, shells and scales, fins and wings, forests and reefs, predators and prey. Again and again, through trial and error, catastrophe and renewal, complexity has risen from simplicity, mind from matter, awareness from silence. Intelligence is not a single miracle, but a recurring theme, a pattern that emerges when the conditions are right. Consider the octopus. Separated from us by 500 million years of evolution, it nevertheless developed problem-solving, memory, curiosity. Its brain is not like ours, it is spread through its body, its arms acting with independence, yet it demonstrates behaviors that echo our own. In aquariums, they have been seen opening jars, dismantling equipment, even sneaking into neighboring tanks for food. Intelligence arose in them not because of kinship with us, but because life tends to probe the boundaries of possibility. Or consider birds. The crow and the raven solve puzzles, use tools, recognize themselves in mirrors. Parrots not only mimic speech but understand context, forming bonds and memories that last a lifetime. In the age of dinosaurs, some of these avian ancestors may have been as clever as modern mammals, navigating their worlds with minds honed by survival. Intelligence did not wait for humans. It has appeared in feathers, in beaks, in wings, and then mammals, Dolphins communicate in complex vocalizations, names for each other carried in clicks and whistles. Elephants mourn their dead, remembering individuals for decades. Apes craft tools, learn sign language, pass traditions from one generation to another. Even within our own lineage, intelligence blossomed more than once, as Neanderthals and Denisovans showed. Humanity is not a singularity, but part of a broader flowering. From this perspective, intelligence looks less like a rare accident and more like a cycle. Conditions align, complexity builds, and minds emerge. Sometimes they fade, as when the great cephalopods of prehistory lost their dominance. Sometimes they are cut short, as with the Neanderthals. Sometimes they thrive, as with us, for now. The story is not of one species destined to think, but of intelligence arising again and again in different forms, at different times. Speculation carries us further. If intelligence is a recurring theme, then civilizations may also be cycles. Perhaps on Earth, over spans too vast for memory, other minds have risen, reached outward, and fallen back into silence. Perhaps the Earth has hosted not one, but many waves of intelligence, each erased by extinction, by catastrophe, by time itself. This view changes our place in history. We are not the pinnacle, but one expression among many. We are not unique, but part of a pattern. Intelligence may be like the tides advancing, retreating, returning, reshaping the shore each time. Each wave is different, but all are made of the same sea. And if this is true here, why not elsewhere? If life on Earth produced intelligence more than once, why should the universe not do the same? Perhaps intelligence is not a spark but a rhythm, pulsing across planets, across galaxies, across time. Civilizations rise and fall like stars, brief but luminous, each one a part of a greater pattern we have only begun to glimpse. Pause for a moment and imagine the Earth as a stage not of one performance but of many. Each act begins with silence, life stirring, complexity emerging, minds awakening. Each act ends with silence, extinctions sweeping away what was. But the curtain never falls for good. The stage is cleared, the players return, and the story begins again. We are simply the latest act in a play, older than memory, and perhaps not the last. And maybe that is the most humbling realization of all. We may not be the first to wonder, to build, to dream. We may not be the last. We are part of a cycle, one wave among many in the endless ocean of intelligence. And the question that remains is not whether the cycle will end, but how long our wave will last before the tide turns again. When we think of intelligence, we often imagine it as a ladder, always climbing upward. From tools to fire, from agriculture to cities, from industry to spaceflight, each step feels like progress, inevitable and permanent. But the history of Earth suggests otherwise. Life is not a ladder, but a cycle, and civilizations may not be destined to climb forever. They may rise, flourish, and collapse long before the stars are ever reached. This idea is known as the Great Filter, a threshold that intelligence may struggle to cross. Somewhere between the spark of civilization and the leap to cosmic permanence lies a gauntlet of risks: resource depletion, climate change, nuclear fire, asteroid impacts, pandemics, countless traps that can snuff out the fragile flame of intelligence before it escapes its home planet. The Earth has faced these trials before. Extinctions have swept across its surface like waves, ending reigns that lasted hundreds of millions of years. The dinosaurs were undone in an instant, their 165 million-year legacy erased by a single rock from space. Other extinctions were slower, brought on by climate shifts or volcanic fire, but their effect was the same. The world reset, the story restarted. Intelligence, if it ever flickered then, was extinguished along with the rest. For us, The risks are different, but no less real. Our civilization consumes resources at a pace the Earth cannot sustain. Forests fall, oceans warm, species vanish. The climate grows unstable, reshaped by our own hand. Nuclear weapons wait in their silos, silent but always present. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, pandemics, all hold the potential to reshape or undo us. We imagine ourselves secure, yet the truth is that we are as fragile as any species before us. The Great Filter may not be a single event, but a convergence of pressures. Civilizations, by their nature, grow complex, drawing energy from their environment. But the more they grow, the more unstable they become. Too much consumption leads to collapse. Too much power invites catastrophe. The very tools that give us strength may also bring our undoing. Some scientists suggest this is why we see no evidence of other civilizations in the universe. The silence of the stars is not because intelligence is rare, but because it is fragile. Civilizations rise, but few survive the filter. They burn brightly for a moment, then vanish, leaving no trace beyond their home planet. Perhaps Earth has seen this cycle more than once. Perhaps others rose and fell long before us, undone by the same traps we now face. And so humanity becomes its own case study. We stand at the edge of possibility, capable of reaching outward into space, of enduring beyond the Earth. But we also stand at the edge of collapse, our technologies racing faster than our wisdom, our consumption outrunning our resources. Which path we take will decide not only our future, but whether we join the silence of those who came before. Close your eyes and imagine civilizations rising like waves, each cresting with brilliance, fire, cities, tools, art before crashing back into the sea of silence. Imagine the Earth holding their stories, erasing them, recycling them, until only faint whispers remain. Now imagine us as one more wave, building higher, brighter, faster. Will we endure, or will we too fall? The Great Filter reminds us that intelligence is not destiny. It is fragile, contingent, fleeting. To survive, it requires more than knowledge. It requires wisdom, restraint, balance with the Earth itself. Without that, we may simply be another forgotten chapter, our story erased, our presence reduced to whispers in stone. Human memory is short, but human imagination is long. We carry stories that outlive empires, myths that survive the collapse of civilizations, whispers that echo across thousands of years. And sometimes those stories speak of technologies not yet possible, of knowledge that seems out of place, as though they are fragments of something older, remembered imperfectly through the haze of time. The myth of Atlantis, first described by Plato, tells of a great island civilization, advanced and powerful, that fell in a single night of fire and flood. For centuries it has been dismissed as allegory, a philosopher's metaphor for pride and collapse. Yet the story persists, retold in countless variations, always carrying the same haunting image: a civilization lost, erased, leaving behind only rumor and ruins. Was it merely a tale, or a distorted memory of some earlier rise, erased so completely that only myth remains? In India's ancient epics, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, we find descriptions of flying machines called vimanas, capable of traveling vast distances, even waging war in the sky. Some passages describe them in detail, their shapes, their sounds, their movements. To modern eyes, they read like fantasies of aircraft or spacecraft. To ancient storytellers, they may have been symbols of divine power. But what if they were something else? What if they were echoes, however distorted, of technologies remembered from long before, carried in oral tradition through endless generations? The Sumerians, among the earliest known civilizations, wrote of gods who brought knowledge, who taught writing, agriculture, and architecture. In their myths, these gods descend from the heavens, bearing tools and wisdom beyond human invention. To us, they are symbols, metaphors of discovery. But could they also be memories, twisted by retelling, of a time when knowledge was passed down not from gods, but from an earlier civilization? Now, forgotten? Even the simplest myths may hold echoes of forgotten technologies. Prometheus stealing fire for humanity, a gift that transformed survival into civilization. The discovery of metal, shaping copper and bronze, iron and steel, each age remembered as a gift from the divine. Myths of flood and fire, of towers reaching to the heavens, of knowledge gained and lost, all may be cultural memories of earlier rises, passed down in the only way possible, as stories. Speculation carries us further. Imagine that before our recorded history, another civilization had risen, not global, perhaps, but advanced enough to shape myths that would survive its collapse. When it vanished, its technologies were remembered imperfectly, their functions reimagined as divine miracles. Over generations, details blurred, knowledge transmuted into allegory, and so what began as memory became myth. This is not to say that Atlantis or Vimanas were real in the literal sense, but myths may not be pure invention. They may be fragments of cultural memory, refracted through time. Archaeology shows us that oral traditions can preserve memories of real events for thousands of years: floods, volcanic eruptions, migrations. If memory can survive so long, might it not preserve traces of forgotten technologies as well, hidden within allegory and legend? Close your eyes and imagine the ancient storytellers gathered around fires, retelling the tales passed to them by their ancestors. They speak of flying machines, of lost islands, of gods bearing knowledge. They do not understand the details, but they carry the essence. They remember, in dreamlike fragments, a time when something greater once was. For them, it is myth. For us, it may be the only surviving trace of an earlier chapter in the story of intelligence. And even if such civilizations never truly existed, the persistence of these myths reveals something profound. We sense, deep within, that rise and fall are part of the pattern, that knowledge can be lost as easily as it is gained, that civilizations, no matter how great, are fragile. The myths remind us of what we fear, and perhaps of what we already know, that we, too, may one day be remembered only in distorted echoes, our technologies reimagined as legends, our monuments transformed into symbols in stories yet untold. Civilizations like to imagine themselves permanent. We build monuments of stone and steel, towers that scrape the sky, bridges that span valleys, roads that cut across continents. We imagine they will outlast us, testaments to our power. Yet the truth is more fragile. The archaeology of absence reminds us that almost everything we make disappears quickly, and the earth is patient in erasing what remains. Most of our creations are made of materials that decay swiftly on geological timescales. Wood rots, paper crumbles, textiles disintegrate. Metal corrodes, glass shatters, concrete fractures and returns to dust. Even steel, left untended, collapses into rust within centuries. Within a few thousand years, our cities, if abandoned, would be covered in forest, drowned by seas, buried in sand. After 10,000 years, almost nothing recognizable would remain. After 1,000,000, even less. The monuments we point to as eternal are exceptions, not the rule. The pyramids of Egypt, massive blocks of stone in the desert, survive because of arid climate and scale. Even so, they are eroding, their surfaces crumbling grain by grain. Göbekli Tepe, a temple complex in Turkey older than agriculture itself, was buried by its builders, preserved by accident rather than design. Stonehenge, those ancient megaliths, endure because they are slabs of rock set in open fields. They are impressive, but they are also rare. For every monument that survives, countless others have been erased, leaving only faint scars or nothing at all. And here lies the question: what if earlier civilizations built differently? What if their monuments were not of stone, but of wood, clay, or other materials that decay? What if their architecture was woven from organic matter, designed to blend with the environment? What if their technologies were ephemeral, efficient but fragile, leaving no mark strong enough to resist the patience of erosion? If such civilizations existed, they would be invisible to us now. No pyramids would stand, no stone circles would remain. Their presence would be erased not by catastrophe but by time itself, their works vanishing into soil and sea, leaving behind only the faintest chemical traces, if that. Even in our own age, the most enduring markers of our civilization may not be our tallest towers or most beautiful monuments. They may be the unintentional traces, plastics, isotopes, chemical residues. Our architecture will vanish, our art will be lost, but our waste will endure, fossilized into the record. If this is true for us, then what of those who might have come before? Perhaps they, too, left only the faintest traces, overlooked because we do not yet know how to recognize them. This is the archaeology of absence. It is not the study of what remains, but the acknowledgement of what does not. It forces us to see history not as a complete record, but as fragments, scraps that survived by accident. It humbles us, reminding us that the vast majority of the past is lost, perhaps forever. Close your eyes and imagine a civilization that built with wood and clay, its cities vibrant and full of life, its art carved into fabric and paint, its monuments woven into forests. Now imagine 10,000 years passing. The cities rot, the art dissolves, the monuments return to soil. Forests reclaim the land, seas wash it clean. Within 1,000,000 years, nothing remains, and yet, for them, in their moment, their world was as real and vivid as ours. The absence in the record does not prove they never existed. It proves only that time does not preserve equally. Some voices are carried forward, others are silenced, and perhaps the silence is far greater than the sound. The archaeology of absence asks us to imagine not only what we see, but what we do not. Not only the ruins that endure, but the civilizations erased. It is an invitation to humility, to recognize that the earth remembers little and that we may be one of many whose stories are destined to fade into the silence of stone. Humanity has always told stories of beginnings and endings, of golden ages long past, of floods that swept the world clean. These myths echo across cultures, appearing independently in lands separated by oceans and mountains. They carry patterns too consistent to ignore, as though they are not only stories, but memories. Memories stretched across time, carried in song and ritual, told and retold until they blurred into myth. What are myths, after all, but vessels of memory? They are stories polished by countless tongues, reshaped across generations, until they no longer resemble chronicles, but carry truths nonetheless. They are like fossils of the imagination, fragile impressions pressed into culture, surviving long after the civilizations that first told them have vanished. Sometimes they preserve history so distorted it looks like dream, and sometimes they hold fragments of events so vast that only metaphor could contain them. When we listen to myths, we are not just hearing stories, we are eavesdropping on the deep memory of our species, memories that reach back beyond writing, beyond language itself, into times when survival and story were the same. And perhaps, hidden within their symbols, they speak not only of our ancestors, but of others who walked this world before us. A people watching the seas rise, watching fire fall from the sky, watching their homes dissolve into forests or waves, might have carried the memory of loss into story, and story into myth. By the time it reaches us, it is allegory, but at its heart, it might still be remembrance. The flood is one of the oldest and most universal of these memories. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of a deluge that drowned the world, with only one man warned to build a vessel and preserve life. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah's Ark echoes the same tale. In India, the god Vishnu warns Manu of a great flood, guiding him to safety. In the Americas, indigenous peoples speak of waters rising and the world beginning anew. Even in Australia, Aboriginal traditions describe ancient floods reshaping the land. These stories come from every corner of the earth, suggesting not invention, but remembrance. Perhaps they preserve the memory of real floods, glacial meltwaters at the end of the Ice Age, sea levels rising hundreds of feet, drowning coastlines and wiping out settlements. Or perhaps they recall something even deeper, cycles of destruction and renewal, civilizations erased, the earth itself resetting. Then there are the Golden Ages, myths of times when humans lived in harmony, blessed with abundance, guided by gods or wise ancestors. The Greeks spoke of the Age of Gold, when people lived without toil, free from suffering. Hindu tradition remembers the Satya Yuga, the age of truth, when Dharma was whole and the world uncorrupted. In many indigenous traditions, there are stories of ancestors who lived closer to the divine, whose knowledge surpassed our own. Are these mere dreams of perfection, or distorted memories of times when human or pre-human cultures flourished, then fell, leaving only the impression of greatness behind? Equally mysterious are the myths of gods teaching humans. Across the world, stories tell of figures who descend from the sky or rise from the sea, bringing knowledge, fire, agriculture, medicine, astronomy. Prometheus steals fire from the gods and gifts it to humanity. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent who teaches people the arts of civilization. The Dogon of Mali speak of the Nomo, beings from the stars who brought wisdom of the cosmos. The Sumerians described the Apkallu, sages sent by the gods to bring laws, architecture, and science. We interpret these tales as metaphors, but what if they are memories, refracted through time, of knowledge passed down from earlier civilizations or even from earlier species of human, now lost? Anthropologists know that oral traditions can preserve memories far longer than we once believed. Some Aboriginal stories have been shown to describe landscapes as they were more than 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were lower and coastlines different. These are not myths in the sense of fiction, but cultural memories preserved across hundreds of generations. If memory can stretch 10,000 years, could it not stretch further? Could it not, in distorted form, carry whispers of civilizations erased tens or even hundreds of thousands of years ago? Speculation carries us further still. Perhaps the flood myths do not only recall the end of the Ice Age, but the collapse of earlier societies drowned by rising seas. Perhaps the Golden Ages do not only imagine utopia, but remember epochs of flourishing now forgotten. Perhaps the gods who taught us were not divine, but echoes of real beings, humans of an earlier age, or even pre-human intelligences, their knowledge surviving only as story. Close your eyes and imagine. A civilization flourishes along an ancient coast, its people shaping tools, building settlements, crafting myths of their own. Then the seas rise, slowly but relentlessly, swallowing their world. Generations pass, their descendants wander, carrying fragments of memory. The stories change in detail but keep their essence. Once there was a flood, once there was a world destroyed, once we lived in another way. Millennia later, those stories are told again, written down as myth. Or picture another scenario. A group of survivors from a fallen civilization encounter less advanced peoples. They carry knowledge of farming, of stars, of architecture. They pass it down, but without the full context. The knowledge becomes magic, the teachers remembered as gods. Over generations, the memory transforms into legend, and legend into myth. Yet beneath the allegory lies a kernel of truth, that wisdom is not always new, but sometimes inherited from forgotten worlds. The possibility is haunting. Myths may not prove the existence of earlier civilizations, but they do remind us that memory can endure far longer than we expect. And if memory can endure, even in distorted form, then perhaps myths are not just imagination, but echoes faint, dreamlike, but real of rises and falls that came before us. And so the stories we tell may not only be about the past we know, but about the past we have forgotten. They may be the only surviving fragments of lost worlds, carried not in stone or artifact, but in the human voice, across thousands of years, whispering to us still. Where myth leaves off, literature often begins. When science and memory cannot explain the silence of deep time, imagination steps in to fill the gaps. Across the last century, writers of speculative fiction have returned again and again to a question both terrifying and comforting. What if civilizations are not singular, but cyclical? What if we are not the first and not the last? Isaac Asimov's Foundation series envisioned a galaxy where civilizations rise and fall like empires on Earth, each collapse followed by a rebirth, each dark age giving way to renewal. Arthur C. Clarke's Time Odyssey and Childhood's End pondered cycles on an even larger scale, the rise and fall not just of civilizations, but of intelligence itself, guided or hindered by cosmic forces beyond our comprehension. In countless novels, stories, and films, we explore the haunting thought that the ruins of the past may not only belong to nature, but to beings much like ourselves, long forgotten. These stories resonate because they echo something we feel instinctively, that we are fragile, temporary, perhaps not unique. They take the silence of archaeology and fill it with possibility. Where there are no ruins, they imagine cities buried beneath the sea. Where there are no records, they imagine libraries erased by fire. Where there is no memory, they imagine cycles repeating endlessly, each civilization thinking itself the first, each forgetting those who came before. Philosophy, too, has wrestled with this idea. Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence imagined a universe in which everything repeats infinitely, every life lived over and over, every civilization rising and falling without end. Others have asked whether progress itself is an illusion, whether history is not a straight line but a circle, endlessly turning, with no final culmination. In such a view, humanity is not a pinnacle, but a moment, one link in a chain without beginning or end. The implications are profound. If we are only one iteration in an endless cycle, what does that mean for meaning itself? Does it diminish us to know that others may have risen before and others will rise after, our story only one verse in an eternal song? Or does it deepen our significance, making us part of something larger, something vast and recurring, a cosmic rhythm that we can never fully grasp? At the heart of these questions lies a fear older than civilization itself, the fear of being forgotten. To live is one thing, to endure in memory is another. We build monuments, write books, carve our names into stone, all in an attempt to resist the erasure of time. But deep down, we know the truth. Most lives are forgotten within generations, most civilizations within millennia. The earth itself erases, recycles, renews against deep time. Even the greatest empires are whispers. This fear shapes much of our literature. Stories of lost civilizations are not just about others, they are about us. Atlantis, fallen empires, forgotten ages. These are mirrors of our own anxiety, our awareness that we too may vanish. Science fiction takes that fear and projects it into the stars, asking whether we are destined to join the silence that surrounds us. Philosophy takes it inward, asking whether meaning requires permanence or whether the moment itself is enough. Close your eyes and imagine. A civilization flourishes, writes, dreams, creates. It believes it will endure forever, but time is patient. Mountains fall, seas rise, stars shift. The civilization vanishes, its memory dissolves. Another rises, unaware of what came before. This cycle repeats, again and again. Now imagine that you are living in one of those cycles, not the first, not the last. Your world is vibrant and real, but it too will pass. Does that knowledge diminish you or liberate you? Perhaps the answer lies in the stories themselves. We tell them because we fear forgetting, but also because we hope remembering is possible. Even if ruins crumble, even if memory fades, the idea of lost civilizations remains. It persists in myth, in literature, in philosophy. And in that persistence, perhaps we glimpse a kind of immortality not of any one civilization, but of the cycle itself, the eternal rhythm of rise and fall, remembered not in ruins, but in the human imagination. When we search for lost civilizations, we often look beneath our own feet, into the deep past of Earth. But sometimes the clearest lessons lie not here, but on our neighbors, the planets beside us, whose stories are written across their surfaces in fire and silence. Venus and Mars are twin mirrors of Earth, reminders that a world can be full of promise and still fall into ruin. Venus is almost the same size as our planet, made of the same materials, orbiting not much closer to the Sun. In its early history, it may have had oceans, clouds, perhaps even a climate mild enough to cradle life. But something shifted. Greenhouse gases thickened the air, trapping heat. The oceans boiled away, the surface scorched. Today, Venus is a world of crushing pressure and temperatures hot enough to melt lead, its skies swirling with sulfuric acid. It is a failed Earth, a warning of what happens when balance is lost. If life ever stirred there, it is long gone, erased in the furnace of its own atmosphere. Yet sometimes we wonder, could it have gone further? Could there have been a time when Venus was not hell, but home? Mars tells the opposite story. Once it had rivers, lakes, perhaps even seas. Deltas and shorelines are etched into its surface, evidence of water flowing billions of years ago. The atmosphere was thicker, the climate warmer, perhaps habitable. Today, it is a frozen desert, thin air barely clinging to its surface, water locked in ice or hidden underground. The planet is silent, its rivers long dry, its seas vanished, and yet the memory remains, written in the channels and canyons that scar its face. If life ever existed there, it may still linger underground in microbial form, but sometimes we imagine more. What if life had risen further, building not just cells but societies, not just survival but civilization? If it did, the ruins are long gone, erased by dust storms and deep time. Speculation invites us to imagine Venus and Mars not only as planets, but as possible chapters in the same story. Perhaps intelligence is not unique to Earth, but part of a rhythm that plays across worlds. Venus burned too hot, Mars froze too cold. But what if, in those fleeting windows when both worlds were gentler, life rose? What if civilizations flickered there briefly, only to be silenced by climate, by catastrophe, by the unforgiving patience of time? The silence of Venus and Mars does not prove that no such civilizations existed. It proves only that if they did, they left no trace we can yet see. And perhaps that is the point. If intelligence is fragile, if civilizations rise and fall quickly on geological scales, then most will vanish without enduring. Earth may not be the only planet to cradle civilization. It may simply be the only one whose cycle has not yet closed. Close your eyes and imagine Venus, billions of years ago, its seas shimmering, its skies blue, its lands alive with possibility. Imagine Mars, with rivers flowing, lakes glinting in sunlight, perhaps forests or plains unknown to us now. Imagine, for a moment, that life rose there, shaped its worlds, dreamed its dreams. And then imagine it gone, erased, the planets left as they are now, one a furnace, the other a desert, both whispering of what might have been. Venus and Mars remind us that habitability is not permanent. Worlds change, climates shift, balance is fragile. Earth is no exception. Our planet too has swung between icehouse and hothouse, extinction and renewal. The difference is that, for now, it holds us. But the lesson of our neighbors is clear. Civilizations are not guaranteed permanence. Even planets themselves can lose the balance that makes life possible. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. When we look to Venus and Mars, we do not only see other worlds, we see ourselves reflected in their silence. We see what might await us if we fail to endure. We see the fragility of civilization written across the sky. Earth feels unique to us, but in the vastness of the cosmos, it may be only one among countless experiments. A small blue world circling an ordinary star, tucked into a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars within a universe of trillions of galaxies. Against such immensity, it is difficult to imagine that life, intelligence, civilization would happen here alone. The rhythm that shaped us may not be singular, it may be cosmic. If so, then Earth is not the stage, but a stage. Civilizations may have risen and fallen elsewhere, on planets we will never see, around stars that have already burned out, in galaxies whose light has yet to reach us. Some may have endured long enough to reach the stars, to spread, to leave legacies across time. But most, perhaps, did not. Most may have risen briefly, as we have, only to collapse into silence, their stories erased by their own worlds or by the universe itself. In this view, humanity is part of a much larger rhythm, a universal cycle of rise and fall. Civilizations emerge when conditions allow, flourish for a span, then vanish. Each believes itself unique, each feels its permanence, each leaves only traces or nothing at all. The silence of the cosmos may not be absence, but aftermath. 1,000 voices may have spoken before us, now hushed. 1,000 more may yet rise, after we too are gone. This perspective is both humbling and profound. It diminishes our claim to uniqueness, but it also places us within a grander story. We are not an accident in isolation, but a verse in a cosmic song, one iteration of a pattern that may be eternal. We share in the fate of countless others, linked not by memory but by rhythm. To rise, to flourish, to fall, these may be the universals of civilization, written not only on Earth, but across the stars. Speculation invites us to imagine, perhaps on a planet orbiting a distant sun, a species once looked up at its night sky and wondered if it was alone. Perhaps it built cities, crafted myths, reached outward with science. Perhaps it too imagined itself the first and the last. And now, its world lies silent, its civilization erased, its traces scattered in dust. Somewhere else, another may be rising now, asking the same questions, unaware that others have asked them before. And here we are, caught in our own cycle, standing on the same threshold. Will we endure long enough to join the rare few who reach beyond their planets, leaving lasting echoes in the cosmos? Or will we fall, like so many before, our voices swallowed by silence? The answer is uncertain. But either way, we are part of the rhythm, part of the cycle that shapes not just Earth, but the universe. Close your eyes and picture the cosmos not as empty space, but as a field of rhythms. Each star a drum, each planet a note, each civilization a brief flare of sound. Some flares overlap, some fade quickly, some last longer, but together they form a music beyond our comprehension. Earth is one note in that song, fleeting but real, part of the whole. To see ourselves this way is to accept both our smallness and our significance. Small because we are one among countless others, temporary and fragile. Significant because even in our brevity, we are part of the cosmic pattern, necessary to its completeness. Without our verse, the song would not be the same. And so Earth's place in the cosmic cycle is not to be the first, or the last, or the greatest. It is simply to be, to rise, to flourish, to wonder. And in that wondering, to recognize that we belong to something vast, something eternal, something that stretches far beyond us. The story of humanity feels to us like ascent, a climb from caves to cities, from fire to electricity, from earthbound steps to the edge of space. We imagine ourselves moving ever upward, yet beneath that ascent lies fragility, a truth often hidden by the brightness of progress. Civilizations, no matter how advanced, balance on narrow ridges. A small shift can send them tumbling. And perhaps we, too, walk closer to the edge than we wish to admit. Consider climate. For the first time, a species has gained the power to alter the atmosphere of an entire planet. In only a few centuries, we have raised the concentration of greenhouse gases, warmed the oceans, shifted rainfall, melted ice. Our technologies burn brightly, but they reshape the very balance on which we depend. Like Venus long ago, our world risks being pushed into new states, unfamiliar and unforgiving. Climate is not only weather, it is the stage on which all life performs. Change it too quickly, and the play itself may collapse. Then there is biodiversity, the web of life that sustains us. Forests breathe for us, oceans feed us, soils grow our food, countless species stabilize our world in ways we barely understand. Yet in our age, species vanish at rates not seen since mass extinctions. Forests are cleared, reefs bleached, ecosystems fractured. A collapse of biodiversity is not only a tragedy for the wild, it is a fracture in the foundation of our own survival. Civilizations depend on stability, and when the web frays, everything built upon it trembles. Nuclear weapons are another shadow, a fire born from our ingenuity that could, in moments, erase the work of millennia. For decades they have waited in silos, silent, their existence a paradox, tools of security that guarantee vulnerability, instruments of deterrence that carry the power of extinction. One miscalculation, one failure of restraint, and our civilization could end in hours, its memory scattered in radioactive dust. Artificial intelligence, too, brings promise and peril. It may extend our reach, solve problems, even guard against catastrophe. But it also carries risks we cannot yet measure. Systems that think faster than we do, act beyond our control, reshape economies and societies in ways unforeseen. In AI we glimpse both salvation and undoing, a mirror of our own ambitions, magnified. When we step back, a pattern emerges. Civilizations often collapse not from one blow, but from the convergence of many. Resource depletion, climate shifts, political turmoil, external shocks together, they form storms no society can withstand. Rome, Mesopotamia, the Maya all rose high, then faltered under pressures they could not control. Our technologies are greater, our reach wider, but the principle is the same. Fragility lies within growth itself. The higher the tower, the greater the fall. And so we must ask, are we repeating the same mistakes? Expanding too fast, consuming too much, imagining permanence where none exists? Are we building our story on foundations as fragile as those who came before? The signs suggest caution. For all our brilliance, we remain bound to the earth, to its limits, its balances, its patience. Ignore them too long, and even the greatest civilization may falter. Close your eyes and imagine the future from the vantage of deep time. Imagine our cities eroded, our technologies dust, our memory dissolved. Imagine archaeologists of another species or of another civilization long after us, finding only faint traces plastic embedded in stone, isotopes in the soil, a sudden line in the sediment where life faltered. To them, we would be only one more chapter, one more rise and fall, one more experiment in intelligence undone by its own fragility. This is not prophecy, but possibility, and possibility is enough to give us pause. For the first time, a species can see its risks in advance, can imagine its collapse before it happens. That awareness is both a burden and a gift. It allows us to choose differently if we have the wisdom. If not, we may simply become another silence, another civilization erased, our story reduced to whispers in stone. If humanity were to vanish, the earth would not pause. Forests would regrow, oceans would recover, skies would clear. The rhythms of life would continue, as they always have, indifferent to our absence. And in time, perhaps, intelligence would rise again, not in our form, not with our language, but with its own. Civilizations are not permanent. They are waves, rising and falling, one after another. Who might come after us? Some imagine the dolphins. Their intelligence is already profound, their communication intricate, their societies complex. They live in pods, teach their young, pass knowledge through generations. Their world is acoustic, woven from sound, each click and whistle carrying meaning we only partly grasp. If humans fall, could dolphins inherit the seas, shaping a civilization not of fire and metal, but of song and depth? Others turn to the octopus. Its mind is alien, its problem-solving remarkable. Though their lives are short, evolution could grant them longer spans, more continuity, more opportunity to build. Picture an octopus species that lives for decades, passing knowledge, shaping tools, altering the seafloor. Their civilization would be strange to us, flexible, fluid, built not on permanence but on change. Yet it could be no less real. Corvids, crows, ravens, magpies also stand as candidates. They solve puzzles, recognize faces, plan for the future. Some craft tools, bending sticks into hooks, using them to reach hidden food. Their intelligence rivals that of apes, yet it wears feathers, not fur. Imagine a world where corvids evolve further, their wings adapting, their minds sharpening, their societies spreading. A civilization of flight and vision, perceiving the world from heights we cannot know. And then there is the unknown. Evolution is not predictable. Perhaps the next great civilization will rise not from those we already see as intelligent, but from others altogether. A species now small, unnoticed, might adapt, change, grow. Intelligence may emerge where we least expect it, as it already has before. The first mammals were small, fragile, overlooked among the dinosaurs. Yet from them came us. So too might the next intelligence come from humble beginnings, its future hidden in the shadows of the present. Speculation reminds us that civilization itself is not a singular event but a recurring possibility. It has happened once here, with us. It may happen again, with others. Each rise is a wave, building, cresting, breaking, then giving way to the next. No wave is permanent, but the ocean endures. Close your eyes and picture the earth millions of years from now. The ruins of our cities are gone, recycled into stone. Forests cover the land, seas teem with life. And then, slowly, another species begins to wonder, to build, to dream. They look at the stars, as we do now, and ask if they are alone. They are not the first, not the last, but they are the present. For them, as for us, the world is new, alive, filled with possibility. To think of civilizations this way is to accept our impermanence. we are not the final word, only a chapter. The story continues, with or without us, and in that continuation lies both humility and hope. Humility, because we know we are temporary. Hope, because we know the rhythm endures. Intelligence will rise again, in forms beyond our imagining, carrying the torch forward, even if our flame is extinguished. Perhaps that is the true legacy of civilization, not permanence, but recurrence. Not the endurance of one people, but the endless cycle of minds awakening, wondering, and passing. Each wave is brief, but together they form the eternal sea of intelligence. If we are not the first, then the earth itself is our inheritance. Every stone we carve, every field we plough, every city we build rests upon the ruins of worlds we cannot see. The soil has been turned, the oceans filled, the mountains raised and crumbled countless times before. If civilizations rose and fell before us, then we live not on untouched ground, but on a stage already played upon, its scenery repainted again and again. This thought changes everything. It means that our technologies are not the first fire, our cities not the first lights. It means that the knowledge we prize so deeply may not be entirely new, but echoes of wisdom that others once held, now lost to silence. We may be rediscovering what was known before, reinventing tools and sciences that once existed in different hands, under different skies. If we are not the first, then we are part of an unbroken chain of experiments. Life has tried intelligence more than once, shaping it in cephalopods, in birds, in mammals, in our cousins, the Neanderthals and Denisovans. Civilizations too may have been part of this chain, rising for a time, then vanishing, only for another to rise again. Humanity, then, is not the exception, but the continuation. We are not the beginning, and perhaps not the end. There is humility in this. We so often imagine ourselves unique, destined, chosen. We tell stories in which we are the pinnacle, the first and only beings to build, to dream, to wonder. But if others came before, then our uniqueness is an illusion. We are not the crown of creation, but one branch on a vast and tangled tree, a moment in a long experiment that the earth has been conducting for billions of years. Speculation takes us further. If others came before, what legacies might they have left us, hidden in myth, in geology, in subtle traces we have yet to recognize? Could some of our oldest stories of floods, of fire, of gods teaching knowledge be cultural memories of their passing? Could some anomalies in stone or soil be whispers of their existence, dismissed because we do not yet know how to read them? And if we are not the first, then what does that mean for our place in the cosmos? Perhaps intelligence is not a singular event, but a rhythm, a cycle that repeats wherever conditions allow. If so, then we are not the exception, but the rule. Not unique, but inevitable. Not alone, but one among many. Close your eyes and imagine a forgotten civilization, long before ours, gazing at the stars and asking the same questions we ask now. They wondered if they were alone, if they were the first, if they would endure. Now their voices are gone, but the questions remain, carried forward by us. If others follow after us, they too will ask. The questions are eternal, even if the civilizations that ask them are not. To realize we may not be the first is not to diminish us. It is to place us within a larger story, one that stretches across deep time, across species, perhaps across planets. It is to remind us that meaning does not come from uniqueness, but from connection. Connection to those who came before, and to those who may yet come after. And perhaps that is the deepest truth of all, that we are part of something vast, an unbroken chain of minds awakening and vanishing, leaving behind not permanence, but possibility. We are not the first, and we will not be the last. But in this moment, we are, and that is enough. If we are not the first, the story is humbling. But if we are the last, the story is heavy. To be the final voice in a chorus that has sung for billions of years is to carry a burden unlike any other. It is to hold in our hands not only our own future, but the future of the planet itself. The Earth has nurtured life for nearly 4 billion years. It has seen creatures stranger than our dreams, extinctions that wiped the slate clean, renewals that brought forth wonders anew. Civilizations may have come and gone before us, but life endured, always ready to try again. Yet one day, the Earth's story will close. The sun will grow hotter, oceans will evaporate, the biosphere will collapse. No new civilizations will rise then, no new minds will awaken. If we are the last before that ending, then we are the final chapter in the story of life on Earth. This possibility gives our existence both weight and fragility. It means that what we do now may never be repeated. If we squander this moment, there may be no others to take it up. If we fall, there may be no next wave, no new intelligence to rise after us. We may be the last custodians, the final stewards of a world that has carried life for eons. Imagine what that means. Every forest, every ocean, every creature alive today may depend on us to endure. If we fall recklessly, taking the Earth down with us, then not only humanity vanishes, but the possibility of all future civilizations. Our story would not only be our own, it would be the story of the planet itself, cut short. This vision is sobering. It strips away illusions of permanence. It forces us to confront the possibility that our choices may decide not only our fate, but the fate of the Earth's legacy. We are accustomed to seeing ourselves as temporary, as one among many. But what if we are not? What if this time is the last time? Some might see despair in this thought, but there is also meaning. To be the last is to be unique in a different way, not as pinnacle, not as first, but as final. The last note in a symphony carries its own power. It lingers, it defines the silence that follows. If we are the last, then our responsibility is immense. We must carry the Earth with care, not only for ourselves, but for all who came before and all who will never come after. Close your eyes and picture humanity as the final custodian. Picture our cities, our knowledge, our art, not only as human achievements, but as the final flowering of Earth's long experiment. The last gift of a planet that has nurtured life for eons. Picture the night sky filled with stars, and imagine that we are the final beings on this planet who will ever look at it with wonder. What we see now may never be seen again. If this is true, then our meaning deepens. It means that our task is not simply to survive for ourselves, but to honor the legacy of life itself. To ensure that, whether we endure for millennia or only a few more centuries, we carry forward the story of Earth with dignity. To be the last is not to be diminished, it is to be entrusted. And so the question is not whether we are first or last, but how we live knowing either possibility. For if we are the last, then our choices shape the final memory of Earth. And perhaps that is the greatest responsibility of all. And yet, even as we imagine endings, the universe whispers of continuities far beyond us. Stars live and die, galaxies spin, worlds form and dissolve. Life on Earth may one day fade, but the cosmos itself will continue to weave its tapestry. Perhaps somewhere, in a cradle of water and rock orbiting another star, other beings are looking upward at this very moment, asking questions as old as thought itself. If so, then we are not alone in carrying this burden of wonder. The questions belong to the universe, not just to us. Think of it this way. When you stand beneath the night sky, you are seeing the past. The light from those stars has traveled for thousands, even millions of years to reach you. Some of those stars may already be gone, yet their light still shines. In the same way, perhaps the voices of forgotten civilizations, whether born on Earth or elsewhere, still echo in subtle ways in myths, in memory, in the structures of life itself. They are gone, but their light travels on, carried forward in us. So perhaps our role is not only to endure, but to listen, to hear the silence between the stars, to notice the fragments of the past embedded in stone and gene, to understand that every moment is both fragile and infinite. If we are the last, then we are also the bridge, carrying the story of Earth into the deep silence of time. If others rise after us, then we are the ancestors, the foundation upon which new worlds will dream. Either way, the meaning is not in permanence but in presence. Imagine standing on a quiet shore, waves breaking softly at your feet. Each wave arrives, shines in the light, and recedes, yet the sea remains. Civilizations are like waves. They rise, they crest, they vanish, but the ocean of life continues. Whether we are the first, the last, or simply one of many, we are still part of that ocean, and perhaps that is enough. Close your eyes once more and picture it. 1 billion years from now, the Earth silent, its oceans gone, its continents worn to dust. And yet, somewhere, the memory of us, our questions, our wonder, our fleeting presence may linger. Perhaps in another species who carries our DNA, perhaps in signals traveling through space, perhaps only in the quiet beauty of having once been. To exist at all is improbable, a miracle of chance and chemistry. To wonder about our place in the story is itself a gift. So as you drift into rest tonight, let that thought settle with you. We may not be the first, we may not be the last. But here, now, in this fragile moment, we are. And for the brief span of our lives, we have the chance to hold the earth gently, to look at the stars with wonder, and to know, truly know, that we are part of something vast. And if you let your mind wander further, you might begin to wonder what it means for the universe itself to remember. Not in the way we do, with books or monuments or photographs, but in the slow memory of matter and energy. Every action, every breath, every spark of thought leaves an imprint. The air you exhale tonight will scatter, molecule by molecule, into winds that travel the globe. The photons bouncing from your eyes when you look at the stars will ripple outward forever, faint but unbroken. In ways both small and immeasurable, you are already part of eternity. Perhaps that is what all civilizations truly leave behind. Not cities or machines, which crumble, but moments of awareness carried into the fabric of the universe. The awareness of a Neanderthal staring into a fire. The awareness of a Denisovan tracing beads in the dim light of a cave. The awareness of us, right now, pondering whether we are the first or the last. Awareness is the constant. Civilizations are the vessels, and the vessels may break, but the current flows on. And here is a softer thought. Even if nothing of us endures, even if all our works dissolve into silence, it does not undo the fact that we were here. For a time, against impossible odds, the universe opened its eyes through us. For a time, the cosmos looked back upon itself and wondered. That wonder is not erased simply because it cannot be preserved. It happened, it mattered, and that is enough. So when you step outside tomorrow and see the sky, or touch the bark of a tree, or listen to the hush of rain on the window, remember that you are standing inside a story that began long before you and will continue long after. You are a single page in a book older than oceans, but without your page, the book would not be the same. And maybe, in some far future, another being will look upon the stars with the same sense of wonder you feel now. And in that moment, you will not be forgotten. For in wonder, we are all connected. Every question ever asked joins the same chorus, sung across time, across species, across worlds. So let the thought settle in you, whether first, last, or somewhere in between. To exist at all is the rarest gift. To wonder at existence is the truest legacy. And in this moment, as you breathe and drift and listen, you are part of something that never truly ends. And so the earth keeps its quiet counsel. It has seen empires of stone rise and vanish into sand. It has seen forests spread and vanish beneath ice. It has seen oceans open, swallow continents, and close again as if nothing had happened. Against that vast patience, our existence is a flicker, a single heartbeat in a body billions of years old. And yet, what a heartbeat it is. Think of what it means that, in this brief moment, the universe has become aware of itself through us. Through our questions, our stories, our attempts to reach one another across the silence. For the first time, or perhaps not the first, but certainly in this chapter the cosmos is looking back at itself, reflecting on its own mystery. We are its mirror, its witness, its voice. Perhaps that is the true destiny of intelligence, not to last forever, but to notice, to look upon stars and oceans and say, I was here, I saw, I wondered. Even if the record vanishes, even if no one remembers, the fact of it matters. The act of noticing is itself part of the universe's unfolding. Close your eyes and picture a night sky without names, no constellations, no stories, only a sweep of light across darkness. That is how it was for most of Earth's history, before any mind rose to shape patterns in the stars. And yet, here we are, drawing lines across that vastness, whispering meaning into the void. The lines may fade, the whispers may fall silent, but for a moment they exist, and that is enough. And if one day another mind awakens here or elsewhere, in some future we cannot yet imagine, perhaps it will look upon the sky and feel the same pull. Perhaps it will ask the same questions. Perhaps, in that resonance across time, we will not be lost. For wonder itself is eternal, passed from one spark of consciousness to another, like a flame carried through endless night. So as you sit with this thought, let the weight of time dissolve. Let the presence of Earth, steady and ancient, surround you. Civilizations rise and fall, oceans come and go, even stars are born and die. But for this moment, you are here, you are alive. You are part of the great, unbroken story of being. Perhaps that is how all stories survive, not in stone, not in monuments, but in the wondering of those who come after. Wonder is the true inheritance of civilizations. It does not crumble, it does not rot, it does not fade. It moves from mind to mind, from species to species, carried like a torch across the vast corridors of time. We are not the beginning of that torch, and perhaps we are not the end. We are only its bearer for now, holding it aloft for a brief span before passing it forward, even if we never see who takes it next. Think of the questions you carry in your own life. Where did I come from? Why am I here? What happens after? These are not merely human questions. They are the same questions that may have stirred in Neanderthal minds, watching flames leap in a darkened cave. They are the questions Denisovans may have whispered beneath ancient skies. They are the questions that children in distant futures, human or not, may ask again. The words may change, the languages may vanish, but the questions endure. They are eternal. Close your eyes now and picture the earth from far above, a blue marble adrift in blackness. Cities shimmer faintly, like scattered embers on a coal. Forests breathe, oceans stir, clouds drift in slow, patient spirals. From space, there is no sign of where one civilization ends and another begins. There is only Earth, whole and quiet, carrying the memory of every life it has ever held. And in that stillness lies a reminder: permanence was never the promise. The promise was presence. To live, to see, to feel the sun and the rain, to shape stories, to hold one another close, that was always enough. Civilizations may rise in brilliance, but even the smallest gesture of love or curiosity carries equal weight in the great balance of time. A carved bead in a Denisovan cave, a handprint on stone, a whispered question at the edge of sleep, all are sparks, and all are sacred. Now imagine the Earth long after us. The continents rejoined into another supercontinent. The seas rearranged into new forms. The stars shifted into constellations unrecognizable to our eyes. Perhaps another intelligence will stand where you stand and look upward and feel the same longing you feel now. Perhaps they will uncover some trace of us, or perhaps nothing at all. But even in absence, the pattern continues. Consciousness returns, asks its questions, leaves again. The cycle repeats endlessly, like waves against a shore. And so the question becomes not, will we endure forever, but rather, how will we live while we are here? Will we care for this earth, knowing it has cared for so many before us? Will we use our brief spark to burn bright, or to warm, or to heal? Will we leave behind only silence, or will we leave behind a question, a fragment, an echo of wonder for others to discover? Let that thought rest in you for a while. The weight of time is heavy, but in your hands the present moment is light and alive. You are here. You are breathing. You are part of this ancient planet's story, a thread in the long fabric of life. That is meaning enough. So, as you settle into the quiet, remember this. Civilizations come and go, but wonder endures. The earth remembers in silence, but you remember in consciousness. You are the voice of a world that has spoken in many tongues, in many forms, and will one day fall silent again. Hold that voice gently. Speak with care. Dream with reverence. For this moment is yours, and it will never come again. And when you close your eyes tonight, imagine yourself drifting into that great continuum, a single spark in an endless night, brief, uncertain, but beautiful beyond measure. The stars will still be there, the earth will still turn, and somewhere in the deep silence, the questions will wait, ready for the next voice to ask them.